Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Behind the Reel. I'm your host John, and today we're going to talk about my all-time ultimate favorite lure, and that is the jig. We're going to talk about one jig to rule them all. We're going to talk about what to put on the back of that jig and when and where to throw it to get the most bites. You guys aren't going to want to miss this one. Stay tuned. Alright you guys, so I don't want to overcomplicate things. I definitely have tried out every single jig ever known to man, and I have them right here in this box. Some of them didn't even make the cut. So, you know that saying, jigs all day. That is definitely something to live by, and I catch a lot of fish on jigs, and I've been fishing the jig for a long time, but I have found that one jig, and really it was the jig that I kind of started out with. I went all the way full circle back to the arky head style jig, and there's a bunch of different companies that make them, a bunch of different options out there on the market. I've got my rod right here, and this thing I've been fishing absolutely everywhere, and you can tell that because of all the paint that's knocked off of it. I have literally been fishing this thing in every condition you could possibly think of. I've been putting it in a lot of rock, I've been throwing it in laydowns, I've been throwing it in docks, I've been throwing it in grass. You can swim this thing, you can drag it. There is nothing that this jig cannot do. Like I said, there's a lot of jigs out there, but this one has a hand-tied skirt. It has a really nice hook on it as well, and I find that this keeper I really don't even mess with. I have messed with these keepers and trimmed them down and messed with them over the years. I'll tell you right now, I don't do that with this jig. I just leave the keeper the way it is. I might spread it out a little bit just to give me a little bit more coverage when I'm throwing it in the real thick stuff. So you can spread it out this way just to give it a little bit more coverage as it's rolling through laydowns and brush piles and stuff like that. But this is the one jig to rule them all. This is the Fathead Flippin Jig by True South Custom Lures, and this is my favorite jig. What I'm doing with this jig is a little bit of everything, but right now I'm throwing it right up on the bank, and as you can see, I have this trailer that has quite a bit of action in it. And this is going to be similar to like a speed craw or something like that. So you're going to want something with quite a bit of action as that water temperature rises. And this is the Biz Baits Cutter Craw. So I've got a couple different, and you can see there kind of what the packaging looks like, but I've got a couple different trailers that I like to throw on the back of a jig. This is the one that I like to throw when I'm trying to work that bait a little bit quicker or when the water temperatures are rising. This is also something that you can throw on the back of a chatterbait or even just a Texas rig if you want a little bit more action. Another one that I like to throw is going to be more of that beaver style bait, and this is the Biz Baits Biz Bug. They also have a baby Biz Bug, and it's a big profile, not a ton of action, but you can swim this thing as well. If you separate those claws, you do get a little bit of a kick, and I would call it more of a thump, but I like to Texas rig this thing as well. But it does really well on the back of a jig. I've caught a lot of fish Texas rigging this, and also as a jig trailer there. That'll kind of give you an idea of the difference between the baby Biz Bug and the regular size Biz Bug. They also have a baby cutter craw as well, so if you're looking for this same type of action in a smaller package, they've got an option for you. But kind of circling back around on the jig, the head design, the head shape on this one is really where this thing comes into play. It does everything really well. It comes in and out of cover really well. Like, as you can see, I can drag it through rocks and it's not getting hung up in there. You know, it's really just does everything really well. And I have put this thing through the ringer, and I've caught a lot of fish on this exact jig right here, and I really don't intend on pulling it off anytime soon. As you can see, our hook point is still looking good. I bet you I've caught 30 fish on this bait. We're good to go. Solid hook sets every time. I want to talk about some of the gear that we're throwing this on. Up first is the rod, and I'm going with a heavy action rod. I had somebody on Facebook ask me yesterday why go with a heavy. You know, a lot of people throw medium heavy rods for jigs, and I used to do that as well. But I like to throw fluorocarbon. I think that's where a lot of it comes into play. is the line. If I was throwing braid, maybe I could get away with medium heavy. And it wasn't that I had a ton of issues on the medium heavy, but I wasn't getting the hook sets that I wanted. You know, losing a few fish here and there. Now it is very rare to lose a fish on the jig. A lot of that has to do with running a heavy rod. We've got a 7.6, this is from F5 rods, and this is a 7.6 heavy fast, and this is what I'm using to throw my jigs on. This is also going to be a great Texas rig rod as well. But if you guys are looking for a good jig rod, go over there to f5rods.com and check out that ghost code. If you're looking for some good jigs, definitely check out the True South Custom Lures Fathead Flippin Jig. They've got other jigs over there as well. They've got swim jigs and they've got football head jigs. But I want to say, if you are looking for one jig to rule them all, get you an arky head style jig like this one and throw it wherever you want to throw a jig. If you want to throw it out deep, get one that's a little bit heavier. You know, my sweet spot is at 3/8 to 1/2 ounce, and I've found that I can do just about anything with those two sizes. You know, unless you're going out super deep, you may want to go up to like a 3/4. But 3/8 to 1/2 ounce is definitely the sweet spot for me. I'm fishing a lot of like shallower, dirty water situations here in Kansas. So 3/8 ounce when I can get away with it. And those fish are a little bit finicky. Sometimes that lighter jig head is going to be the ticket to enticing those bites. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to rig up this cutter craw here. I'm going to go ahead and trim off a little bit of it. And by trim, I mean bite. So just line up your trailer with the shank of the hook, and wherever it starts to bend out, that's where you're going to want to bring that bait through. So kind of get an idea of where that's going to be, and maybe even get a frame of reference. So I'm thinking it's going to come out right around this rib section there. So we'll go ahead, bring her through, try to keep it centered as best we can. Okay. Try to keep our skirt out of there as best we can, because we want that skirt to do its thing. So now we've got this jig ready to go, rigged up with the cutter craw. You can find these jigs in all different sizes and colors. I like to go with a lot of the darker colors and that darker water. You know, green pumpkins, black and blues, stuff like that. And I've been having some luck on this one as well. Getting those darker trailers I like to use, like the blacks and the black and blues. And a lot of times I'll go with like a lighter skirt. So just kind of match it up to whatever you're fishing. If you're fishing the darker water, go with the darker colors. If you're fishing clear water, go with some of those more natural presentations. I want to talk about a little bit about where to throw this bait. You know, the jig to me is the ultimate flipping bait. You know, you can throw it into some pretty heavy stuff and you're able to bring those fish right back out. Very rarely do I have issues getting fish out of laydowns and stuff like that. So I do just want to say, like, even around docks and stuff like that, and that's also where the fluorocarbon comes in. A lot of people are throwing braid on it, but you know, the abrasion resistance of the fluorocarbon line is something that really kind of just, I'm a kayak guy, you know, at heart. I have a bass boat and I fish out of it quite a bit as well. But, you know, I don't want to have 4 different jig rods on the boat. So I'm going with fluorocarbon. I really prefer fluorocarbon in just about every fishing application there is to begin with, but especially with jig fishing, and that's kind of where my love for fluorocarbon came from, was fishing the jig and flipping heavy cover. So definitely check out fluorocarbon if you're not running that on your jig setup. You may need to upsize your rod a little bit, like I did with that heavy rod here, that heavy power rod. Fast action is going to be important so you can get a good hook set. You know, a lot of times I may be flipping this thing, but a lot of times I'm actually making some longer casts and dragging this thing just like somebody would with a football jig. The Fathead Flippin Jig or any arky head style jig is a great replacement for a football head jig in most applications. fishing this thing through grass, swimming this thing, I feel like you get just as much action out of that arky head style jig as you do out of a swim jig, and you also get a little bit more of a wobble in there, so you have a little bit more side to side on this arky head style jig. And I've actually found some unique retrieves that entice some bites on the arky head style jig that I really don't play around with much on the swim jig, and that is almost working it like a jerk bait, giving it a pause and then jerking the slack, and it kind of makes that bait flutter in the water column, and it kind of changes in the water column, and you have a little bit of that head wobble that follows as well. And I've gotten bit a lot of times fishing the jig just like that. So, you know, I really feel the arky head style jig is the one jig to rule them all. If you could only have one jig in your box, it's going to be this one. And my recommendation, if you guys are looking for a new jig to fish, go get you some of those Fathead Flippin Jigs. Get you some cutter craws and some biz bugs, and you'll be ready to go catch fish all summer long. Guys, this is a bait that you can fish in the spring, the summer, the fall. You can fish it in the dead of winter. You may want to downsize or upsize in certain situations, so definitely go check that out. Again, just want to shout out F5 rods, that ghost code. This is the tournament series, and that's the heavy fast 7.6. This thing definitely pins them. You're going to be able to drive that hook into the fish, and you're going to be able to wrench him back into the boat, so that way you don't have to worry about losing it. So just to reiterate, you can drag this thing like a football jig, you can swim it like a swim jig, and you can flip it like a flipping jig. This thing absolutely does it all. If you're going to be fishing around docks, I recommend some heavier fluorocarbon, maybe 20 or 25 pound test. 20 seems to be the sweet spot for me. I will say I have broken off 20 pounds, so you know there are definitely those situations where you might want to go up to 25, and docks is definitely going to be the situation where the only situation where I would see a need to go up to 25. But you know, 20 pound fluorocarbon or above, flipping that arky head style jig is definitely going to get you some bites. So guys, if you have any questions about jigs at all, make sure you put them down in the comment section below, and we can talk about it down there. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.